What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, ready to talk some football with Andy Herman the day after the Packers whooped up on the Seattle Seahawks. Andy, how the hell are you, man?
I'm doing great. Always great to be chatting with you, period. Even better on a Victory Monday.
Yes, sir.
Really enjoyed that victory overall. Played with their food a little bit in the second half. Don't really care. That's a great win on the road, 30-13. I'll take it every single time. And I think we got some big takeaways from that one as well. So excited about this one.
Let's start on the defensive side of the ball because, my goodness, it's amazing what a difference Edgerrin Cooper makes. And just as a whole, I thought the whole play up front really set the tone, because I know if you're a Seahawks fan, you're probably pointing to the fact, well, Geno Smith went out. Well, sure, but the Packers certainly still seem to be getting after it early and often up front, really taking advantage of the Seahawks front. And I know they're dealing with injuries along the way, but man, the Packers looked active and, dare I say, dominant from the go last night in Seattle.
Yeah, and we can certainly be realistic about the fact that Seattle doesn't have a great offensive line, right? And we can say that up front. Green Bay's played some not great offensive lines this year and has not looked anything close to what they looked like last night. So to me, that's still a real positive step in the right direction. And all you can do is go against the player across from you. And I thought Green Bay, it would take Seattle stuff aside. I thought Green Bay looked much more, like you said, active, aggressive, attacking, and just being able to win with four guys up front. And I think that's such a big step. Now we'll see if they can continue to, stack success, whatever. It's going to be huge for them moving forward. But man, this is a really positive sign for them. I've said for the last, 3 months, this is a prerequisite for Green Bay to be a good playoff team, is getting home with four. Amazing how much better it looks defensively and how much, easier it is for Jeff Hafley and company when you're getting home with four. This is a great sign for Green Bay, and hopefully they can continue it moving forward.
And the thing is you're getting it from all across the front, right? Like we've talked about Kenny Clark really hitting his stride. That certainly seemed to continue. I think you don't look at a box score with Kenny, you look at the tape, and man, down in and down out, he is a dominant force, and he is causing major problems for opponents. Where you talk about rushing with four, there's so many times they run stunts or whatever, and yet Kenny's not really in the quarterback's lap, but he's absorbing more often than not two guys, and then you're having someone loop around him and almost always coming scot-free because of the work Kenny Clark is doing. Those are the things that you're never going to get highlighted. They're not going to be clipped and put on Twitter, but man, that's the stuff where, to your point, you want to talk about hitting your stride and playing your best ball at the right time, and something that travels, right? This is a game on the road, albeit the Packers fans were amazing, but this is what they talk about when you talk about playoff football and what travels, what works on the road, down in and down out. It's defense and running game, and Packers have both.
Yeah, they showed it off in this game. And I love that opening. We'll talk about offense obviously later, but I love that opening salvo of just going down and scoring and just giving Josh Jacobs the ball. But now going back to defense, and when we talk about getting there with four too, I just love the fact that it doesn't just have to be your front four. And I thought they did a great job, especially Aaron Mosby dropping into coverage, made a nice play, and Egbare dropping into coverage, and then still bringing two linebackers from the middle, maybe dropping two guys out. Those are, again, it's always interesting on if people want to consider those blitzes, because there's guys coming from depth, or it's a four-man rush. And I just think keeping teams on their toes and not knowing, it's the same thing in the secondary. You don't know who's going to be your two deep safeties. They ran a lot of really fun stuff in the secondary on this one. Justice Mosqueda and I were DMing back at 4 a.m. last night and I'm like, I got to go to bed. He's like all excited about all these coverages that Green Bay showed. And I'm like, I will get there. I promise you.
Well, how many times do we see a too high look pre-snap, right? They dropped into all sorts of different stuff post-snap. I haven't looked at the all-22 yet, but I'm like, I'm with you. I'm excited about taking a look, because I do think Seattle got to take advantage of them a few times in that regard. And I'll tell you what, there was a stretch where Hafley literally went 2-man rush into a 3-man rush, and I wanted to throw my computer out the window. But overall, the approach seemed to work really well.
I will say this: if you're going to have a 2-man rush, there cannot be an immediate completion open. That's the one thing I will say.
Andy,
if you're going to do a 2-man rush, there can't be somebody that's open on a 3-step dropping out. That's the one thing I will say. That's the one thing I will say. And that was unfortunate, but I don't know if somebody didn't go and they were supposed to. Who knows? They'll have to get that stuff cleaned up. But no, I did think Jeff was very creative in this one with who they were bringing, who they were dropping out. There's a play where they drop Evan Williams all the way back into coverage. He's showing as a blitzer. He goes all the way back, and then it's Keyshawn Nixon from the slot. That's the other second high safety. Just some really, really fun stuff in this game. And I just think it, especially once you got to Sam Howell and this one, it was like his head was just spinning by that point.
Totally. I mean, that's what's going to be interesting as far as keeping up a rotation, obviously, but also the pieces kind of fitting together. Valentine with a interception after a play where he almost had one, the play literally right before. Man, my guy, I love you. I'm very excited you got your interception, but just need it down in the end zone. What is this desire, this visions in your eyes about, I'm going to take it 100 yards? Man, you made the play. We're all very excited. Just get down to the end zone. Like that drives me insane.
I will say this. I'm willing to give a little bit more accident forgiveness for a guy in his first ever interception. That's probably a little overhyped up. And at the end, it cost him 5 yards, right? It cost him maybe 6 yards. Maybe it was the 14-yard line. So he did do a nice job of avoiding a couple tackles. Otherwise, it could have been down at like your own 5. And then you're like, okay. Right. But at least he got it to the 14, 15-yard line-ish. And like I said, I'm willing to give a young guy first interception, wanting to be a playmaker. He's having visions of Deion Sanders going high, stepping down the field.
Talking about that for the rest of his life. My first interception, 100 yards. I get it.
I totally get it. So if you pick off the pass, I'm willing to give you a pass on that a little bit on your first one. His third, fourth, fifth interception, I'm sure he'll be a little bit more in tune with it and maybe just get that knee down in the end zone.
No, let's hope. I do want to highlight Edgerrin Cooper because I mean, we've seen this defense now for several weeks without him. It's fascinating how he changes everything. He changes the calculus of everything on the defensive side of the ball. And I think you talked about this on Pack-A-Day. It's just crazy to watch the game itself, the broadcast, you can see it, but especially when you turn on the tape, how his closing speed, his explosiveness, he can erase things. There can be a slight, guy doesn't quite fit well, or somebody takes a bad angle or whatever, and he just erases those mistakes with his explosiveness, his ability to close on the ball like that. The Packers seem to have a pretty special player here.
I need you to talk me off the ledge on this one, because usually I'm a little bit more of the voice of reason, and I'm usually more of like, let's stay even keel here, guys. Let's not get too high or too low. I'm freaking out because he is an absolute stud. And I don't ever want to like try to put too much on a player right away, because it's not necessarily fair to the player. We're the ones that are setting these expectations. And then if all of a sudden they don't mean it, we get to meet it. We tear them down.
We beat them back down. Yep. I hear you.
I'm trying my best. I'm really trying my best not to get overly excited. I don't know how you can watch that game at the linebacker position for Green Bay. Aaron, there's not a linebacker in my lifetime that for the Packers who has done something. And I love Desmond Bishop. I love Nick Barnett. Sure. There's some good linebackers there. This dude is just different. And there's still things that he needs to work on. I get it. I understand it. I think Green Bay is mostly being smart and cautious with how much they're giving him, especially coming back right from injury. But in 34 snaps, he is completely taking over a defense that has struggled in the middle of the field. And he's like, not anymore. I'm out there now. And it feels like there's an extra guy in the field because he's everywhere. He's literally everywhere. He's batting down passes. He's picking off passes, tackles for loss, sacks. It's all over. Not to mention 2 tackles on special teams, holds up another guy so Eric Wilson can lay him out on teams. It's just, it's crazy. He's even been used as a gunner, as a punt gunner on teams this year. Like, he's an absolute freak in all the best possible ways. And I am doing my best to temper my expectations, but I'm not doing a great job of it.
I don't think you have to look very far. Like, the first sack, the big sack he has at the start of the game, I mean, he's running a pick, essentially. Like, that's not even his, quote, play to make. Like, that's not designed to get him as a free rusher. Like, he's supposed to be just, like, opening up a lane for someone else. But because the back just comes off of him, which, he's trying to do his assignment, working inside out, etc., he just sees a path to the quarterback and explodes. That's the thing. It's like the distance between him and whoever has the ball is shorter than whoever has the ball thinks it is. That's what's so apparent down in and down out with this kid. It's like he covers ground like that. And that is what I mean when I talk about erasing things, because it's like, they have it all blocked up. No, they don't. No. He erases that. Yeah, I'm with you, man. He's a special player. And the sky's the limit.
He can do so many different things too. He's a good blitzer. He's a good spy. We now see him in coverage, like jumping routes and almost picking off 2 passes in this game, including the Wayne Larrivee dagger in this one and the final moment. Like, it's just, It's really special. It's really fun. I'm so excited to see where that ceiling eventually ends up for him as a player. But there's a difference. And I think when we always talk about like the best of the best, and again, there's a ways to go here for Edgerrin, but the best of the best, just make it look simple and make it look easy. Like it was just like, it's so natural. And I mean, for playing next to a guy like Quay, right? For all of Quay's positives and negatives, whatever, that dude is a freak athlete. And to play next to that guy and look totally different, even still in a total different level of athleticism. And how many times, Aaron, do we see players like this where they've got that pure unadulterated speed and they just go flying by or overrun a play or maybe don't have the change of direction? It's all so natural for him where it's just like, there's nothing that he cannot do. There's nothing that you're like, oh, it's great that he has like a straight line speed, but doesn't have the agility. No, it's just so natural and raw and beautiful. And that's why, again, I'm so high on it, because again, as you start to fine tune those things and he starts to become more comfortable and he's not even thinking as much and he's just flying around, I'm telling you, I'm not okay. I'm
no, I hear you. No, I am not going to temper any of that enthusiasm because you said it. I mean, I think they're being smart as far as I know there's been calls and lots of frustration from Packers fans about he needs to play every down and get him out there, and which I totally agree. Like it's very clear that's where this is headed, right? But I also understand coming off an injury, still a rookie, you're doing a lot. I mean, we just talked about how many different looks did they give and how many different ways do they disguise things, and like it'll be there eventually, right? He'll be on the field 100% of the time sooner rather than later. But I understand being kind of, not even want to say cautious, but kind of just bringing him along at a steady clip and letting him get comfortable in what you're asking him to do before adding more and more stuff onto his plate. And that will come.
It's working, right? Like it's working right now. And then now you can, again, use incremental, additions onto what he's doing right now. And I'm totally for that. And I think it's totally different too. If he doesn't miss all that time in camp, if he doesn't miss the time with the recent
100%
hamstring injury, we're probably talking about a guy that's already playing 50, 60 snaps per game, right? But with all of those kind of setbacks that he's had through the course of the season, I don't know if this is going to be another person they need to send to Madison in the offseason to figure out, like, hey, let's make sure this stuff's not happening with the super freak athlete again. But overall, again, so enticing of what he could potentially become.
Let's flip it over to the offensive side of the ball. And you mentioned it, playing with their food in the second half. And look, again, much like last week with the Watson fumble, I think a lot of this doesn't even get talked about if Josh Jacobs just holds onto the ball. You know what I mean? Because who knows where that drive ends up going up. Most likely results in more points. And
if they hit the throw before that, if they hit the throw even right before that too.
Exactly. So to me, I'm not too concerned about it. It's not a warning bell for me because here's the other thing. When they needed to, they still put the dagger in. They scored 30 points, for goodness sakes. And they've scored 30 or more in the last, 4 games?
4 weeks in a row.
This is an offense that's working. I'm not saying they've arrived or they're elite or they're the best in the league. And when it doesn't seem to, reading the internet, but that should encourage Packers fans because there's still stuff that they're working on. There's still places for them to improve. And I'm telling you, that's exciting to me because they're doing all that, the kind of struggle, scoring 30 a game. So, yeah, and it all started with that first drive coming out, obviously getting Josh Jacobs the ball early and often. You're a man after my own heart, Mr. LaFleur. But the thing that I didn't see a lot of talk about this so far, but one of the things I loved that they did early on, and I think this is most likely a direct response to what happened to them in Detroit, they used a lot of tempo, but not like hurry up offense. Just in and out of the huddle real quick, up to the line of scrimmage, get the snap off. Like they weren't going to let that defense get on the snap count, get on the cadence. They weren't going to run the clock down to 1 second on the play clock. They had an up-tempo approach that really put the Seahawks on their heels right from the start.
No, I think that's a really good call out. I loved how Green Bay opened this game. When you get off to a 14-0 start, 2 immediate touchdown drives, like that's what we've been looking for. We know we saw it against Miami. We saw it against San Fran. You get off to those big starts and it's really difficult to play against Green Bay at that point. And all of a sudden you see like Seattle actually ran the 5 yards per carry when they ran the ball, but they got away from running the football because Green Bay was out to that lead so early and often in this one. So I love what Green Bay did on offense early. I wish they could have sustained the running game a little bit more. That would have been definitely something. I think if they just allow Jacobs to get going a little bit more in that second half, I don't think we're talking about maybe that little lull and dip in the game. And sometimes it's circumstantial. You get a third and 1, 3rd and inches, and you just can't pick up that play. And Leonard Williams makes a great play to, get into the backfield and make a big stop. If they pick up that, maybe he continues to get going. Like, who knows some of those things, but it is crazy to me. And I'm completely with you that for a team that is scoring 30 points per game, basically one of the top offenses by any metric that you want to look at it, it still feels like they're at what, like 60, 70% of what like they are capable
totally
of.
agree. Yeah.
And it's remarkable because you just feel like if they put a complete game together on offense, like, was it 49, 53, 52 points? Like, like, what's it going to be? Because they're like, as they stumble through and kind of sleepwalk even through little portions of this game, they're still putting up 30 kind of like without much resistance. Even against some really good defenses on the road. Like it just doesn't seem like it's
Seattle had been playing really well on defense. We want to talk about like, yes, they had problems on their offensive line. They had issues. They had to put a backup quarterback in. That's all. I totally get that. But you flip it around, you talk about their defense. They had been playing lights out ball for like the last month, and the Packers did what they wanted most of the night.
Agreed. It's crazy. And I'm with you that I'm excited for that, because when you got that offense and it hasn't even hit its stride yet, again, they are such a dangerous team if they get hot at the right time that nobody in the league is going to want to see that team. Now, it's up to them to play the standard of football that I think we all think that they are capable of. But again, I am very bullish still on what this team can become if they put everything together at the right time.
What's interesting is you look at the kind of target distribution last night, right? And it's fascinating to me how Dobbs just makes this offense whole. And it's not because he's the most dynamic. It's not because he's even the, quote, best receiver. But, man, you can tell Jordan just trusts him implicitly. Yeah. He knows when he, like, puts that ball. That first touchdown, that throw is absolutely insane. I mean, the backer almost gets it. And the work, obviously, that Dobbs does after the catch to get into the end zone, it's just, that's a play that I don't see a lot of these other guys making, but it's not something that you're like, oh, well, that no one else could do that. But he does it. It's just, he just seems to have a really special place in the offense, and as far as like being connected to the quarterback who seems to trust him implicitly.
It feels like everyone is a little bit of a different ingredient and a different flavor of wide receiver and weapon in this offense and has a little bit of a different role. And Romeo Dobbs is somebody that you can tell Jordan Love feels super confident, especially when they're going against man-to-man situations and he gets one-on-ones, then it's Romeo Dobbs time. And you could tell, especially early in that Detroit game, that they really missed Romeo and they were going some heavy man-to-man coverage. And they just didn't have that guy that was separating with the level and consistency that Romeo Dobbs is able to do. And I think you saw it in a couple of those opportunities in this game. If he can just go out and win those one-on-ones, and Jordan, to your point, is so comfortable in throwing it to him, even if it's a tight contested play, like Jordan feels comfortable that Romeo's going to make a play on it and usually come down with it, if nothing else. So no, he's an ingredient that Green Bay needs. And even though I love Reed, Watson, Wicks as your three, and Kraft and Jacobs, like that's an unbelievable 5-man weapon group. It just feels like Dobbs is a different sort of flavor than they have from anyone else. And they need that flavor within this offense. So if you're, we've talked about, they don't have this number one alpha guy or whatever, what they have is guys that can win in all different situations. And he's one that they have for specific situations. And he's really, really good at it. And they didn't have that against Detroit. It cost them. They had it in this game and it really helped them.
I do want to give a shout out to the offensive line in this game, because you mentioned Leonard Williams earlier, and man, you talk about a concern heading into a game, and a guy who had been taking over games for the last month or so. Absolutely one of the best defensive tackles that this team will face all season long. I'm not going to say he was an afterthought, but they took care of him. There was that one play where it seemed like there was a bit of a mess up. I don't know who went where as far as the pass or the line kind of firing off, but looked like they were slanting, but somebody went the wrong way. I don't know what happened there. But that was literally the one time Leonard Williams seemed to affect a play on the field. Other than that, they took care of him. And that, to me, is somewhat shocking, because that, like I said, that guy has been wrecking games against all the other teams they faced.
I can't say enough about this 5-man group, especially as a pass blocking unit. I mean, no sacks in this game for Seattle. Again, on the road, Green Bay threw a decent amount in this game. Jordan did a pretty good job of getting rid of the ball and letting his kind of playmakers do some of the heavy lifting. But even still, you're not allowing too many pressures. You're allowing Jordan to get the ball off. And Jordan made some really nice plays of just kind of escaping and or at least like getting the ball off, maybe with a little bit of duress. But that's going to happen no matter what. I thought they were fantastic going against the Seahawks pass rush. Nothing ever really seemed to bother them up front, and they just took care of business. early on, run blocking was great. I thought as the game went on, I would have liked to have seen it a bit more consistent, but so that's a winning performance from the offensive line.
Seemed like Seattle adjusted. I don't know
They did.
how. I got to look at it, but it
They
really
did.
felt like as that game went on, especially in the second half, they had a lot more answers to what Green Bay was trying to do on the ground than they did at coming out of the gate. And hey, I mean, they get paid too. McDonald's a really good young coach, and they have
Yep.
been playing really good ball, like I said, for like a month plus. So, yes, at some points they're going to probably stop what you're doing because they're good
Exactly.
too. Um,
Agreed.
Andy, I'm really excited, obviously for the big win. Gonna have this Monday nighter against the Saints, and I don't believe in trap games, but this one might make me believe. This is a team that I know the backup quarterbacks and the whole thing, but you go back and you watch that Washington game yesterday, they were right in it, man. They were right down there at the goal line with a chance. So this is a game Packers can't sleep on. Absolutely.
No, I totally agree with that. I think Green Bay wins this. I do think Darren Rizzi has them playing a good brand of football, and it's just competitive. It's hard nosed. It's tough, and they don't quit. And I mean, I think they were down 17-0 in that game to watch something
Absolutely.
like that.
Yep.
And Hayner didn't look good. They bring in Rattler. He looked much better. I would think that there's not much chance that Hayner's going to start in this game. I think it would either be
Right.
Rattler or Derek Carr if he's ready to go. But yeah, they just give you a fight, especially since Rizzi has taken over. And we'll see what happens with Kamara. I know he got a little bit banged up in this game.
Up, yeah.
The Saints don't have the horses to compete with Green Bay in this game, in my opinion, but that doesn't mean that they're not competitive. And we saw them come this close to beating a playoff team in Washington just this past week. So take them lightly at your own demise, and they will fight you. But if Green Bay just comes out and plays their brand of football, I feel very confident that Green Bay can come away with hopefully a convincing win in this one.
That's what I'm talking about. Andy, always appreciate the time. Make sure you're checking out Pack a Day podcast. Andy, thanks so much.
Hey, appreciate it, Aaron. Talk to you soon.